I got an email recently from someone who says that they're just walking away from faith, and they apparently have some residual reservations, such that they sound like they're still Christian. They have some questions for me, but it seems like they just copied the questions from somebody else, somebody who's still a believer. And they're the same questions that we hear all the time. So my audience will have heard every one of my answers to these before, over and over again. But that doesn't change the fact that I still get asked these same questions inevitably, repeatedly, indefinitely on Twitter, X, or on Facebook, Meta, or in email, until they change the name of that to something stupid. It never happens that someone reads my answers and adjusts their understanding accordingly to stop asking these questions. No, they keep on asking and never correct their or reconsider their presuppositions. The form of the inquiry may change sometimes, but it's still all the same basic questions almost every single day for weeks and months and years, and for me, decades now. If I don't answer these questions this way in a video, then I'll be doomed to waste all my time answering these exact questions again and again in private messages like this one from someone else tomorrow or next week or every week thereafter, forever. Such is my inbox nearly every day. So let's get into it.
Are you absolutely sure there is no God?
There are a few things we can be absolutely certain of. Science considers proof in the positive sense to only exist in mathematics. So people always ask me for absolute proof. Sorry, that's a mathematical situation. That's not in science. Science is only talking about what is supported by evidence versus what is not. And in philosophy, sometimes it can be logically impossible to prove non-existence, especially when we're talking about an imperceptible being with infinite magic powers, so that enabling itself to remain hidden from any form of detection. It's more realistic to consider degrees of certainty, in which case I know that God does not exist to the same degree and for the same reasons that I know leprechauns don't exist. So that would make me a strong or explicit atheist. However, for much of my life, I was an implicit or agnostic atheist. I didn't yet know that there was no God, but there was never a good reason to believe that there was one, and having no reason to believe something is a pretty good reason not to believe it.
If not, then is it not possible that there is a God?
In order to say whether something is possible, there must be a precedent or parallel or verified phenomenon indicating that such possibility exists. You don't have that for God. So not only is there no evidence for God, and there is substantial evidence against God, but there is literally not even a possibility to consider. Instead, all you have is faith, which was defined in the Devil's Dictionary as belief without evidence in what is told by one who speaks without knowledge of things without parallel.
And if it is possible that God exists, then can you think of any reason that would keep you from wanting to look at the evidence?
I always want to see the evidence. If there was any, there would be no reason for me not to want to see it. Believers, on the other hand, habitually refuse to learn anything about the evidence for my position or against theirs, because my position is an investigation where new evidence can change my direction, while theirs is a belief system where they must defend the faith even when it means resorting to dishonesty, even when they know that what they believe is not really true. So unbelievers will never fear any truth the way believers do.
Would you agree that intelligently designed things call for an intelligent designer of them?
Yes, if there was any evidence for an intelligent designer, then by the law of non-contradiction, it would be evidence of an intelligent designer.
If so, then would you agree that evidence for intelligent design in the universe would be evidence for a designer of the universe?
Yes, again, if there was evidence of intelligent design, then that would be evidence of the intelligence that designed it. However, there is no evidence of intelligence beyond that of humanity being involved in the design of anything. and nor is there even a possibility by which a non-human intelligence might have done any of the things believers imagine that it did.
Would you agree that nothing cannot produce something?
I know of no example beyond that of subatomic particles blinking in and out of existence in quantum fluctuations. However, I am confused as to why I have to answer this exact question almost every single day, because we unbelievers are not the ones who believe that everything came from nothing. Creationists are the ones who believe that a magic invisible man uttered an incantation to conjure everything out of nothing, creation ex nihilo. And from our perspective, some aspects of the universe at least have apparently always existed and were thus never created. Models of Big Bang cosmology have a singularity rather than nothing at the beginning of cosmic inflation, which itself is not necessarily the beginning of the universe.
If so, then if the universe did not exist, but then came to exist, wouldn't this be evidence of a cause beyond the universe?
No, at least not according to cosmologists like Sean Carroll. However, he and many other astrophysicists consider the universe to be internal in both directions, such that it was never created and never originated.
Would you agree with me that just because we cannot see something with our eyes, such as our mind, gravity, magnetism, the wind, that does not mean it doesn't exist?
We have devices to detect colors outside of our visual range that can detect invisible gases even at incredible distances, and they can even detect things like gravity waves. We can also verify the constituent components of air, which the people who wrote the Bible could not do. They thought that air was spirit, and so that when you breathe out your last breath, they call that giving up the ghost. But everything you were told about your supernatural soul is literally just hot air.
Would you also agree that just because we cannot see God with our eyes does not necessarily mean he doesn't exist?
If there really was a God, he probably wouldn't stay invisible. But even if he did, then we still wouldn't necessarily expect to be able to see him and probably wouldn't even try to see him. It's what we can see that presents a problem for God. There is also evidence against God in the realm of logic, and we can't see that either.
In the light of the Big Bang evidence for the origin of the universe, is it more reasonable to believe that no one created something out of nothing, or someone created something out of nothing?
There was never a time when there was just nothing, so there is no reason to imagine something coming from nothing. I wonder if my audience has yet grown annoyed at hearing this stupid question again? Why are we being asked this every fucking day when there was never any reason I know of why anyone should ever think that atheists are the ones who believe everything came from nothing? That's what the creationists believe. Why does virtually every believer accuse us of this every day of every week, despite numerous corrections? Stop asking us why we believe what we never believed. If someone says that they believe something, then you can ask them why they believe whatever they said they did. But don't ask us why we believe what we don't.
Would you agree that something presently exists?
Yes, I object to Hegelian idealism, accepting that there is a material universe beyond my own mind and which precedes any consistent definition of consciousness.
If something presently exists and something cannot come from nothing, then would you also agree that something must have always existed?
Yes, I accept the first law of thermodynamics, which holds that material energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So it wasn't, and it won't be.
If it takes an intelligent being to produce an encyclopedia, then would it not also take an intelligent being to produce the equivalent of 1,000 sets of encyclopedia full of information in the first one-celled animal? Even atheists such as Richard Dawkins acknowledge that amoebas have as much information in their DNA as 1,000 Encyclopedia Britannicas.
It doesn't matter what Richard Dawkins did or didn't say. In science, there are no authorities. It only matters what the facts are. And in this case, the fact is that it depends on how you define and measure this information. I'm told that if you convert the human genome into binary, then our whole genome would fit into a CD-ROM. Not that it matters, because one of the hallmarks of intelligent design would be an efficient simplicity, such as we do not see anywhere in biochemistry, which is grotesquely and unnecessarily excessively complex, especially considering how inefficient it is, with only about 5% of the genome being functional, with both coding and regulatory. Such a level of inefficient complexity is an indication of a haphazard and incidental assemblage of blind processes without any prior goal or purpose.
If an effect cannot be greater than its cause, since you can't give what you do not have to give, then does it not make more sense that mind produced matter than matter produced mind, as atheists say?
We know that matter produces mind, that every mind known to man is an emergent aspect of matter. There is no means by which a mind can even exist independent of the brain or similar structure that generates it. Nor is there any means or mechanism by which to reverse that, such that a mind could produce matter. You're talking about literally dreaming things up, wishing things into being, abracadabra, magic. Magic isn't real, and your proposed disembodied immaterial mind evidently isn't even possible.
Is there anything wrong anywhere? If so, how can we know unless there is a moral law?
Laws are not necessarily moral. For example, many of what are falsely declared to be the God's laws in the Bible and in the Quran are objectively immoral.
If every law needs a lawgiver, does it not make sense to say a moral law needs a moral lawgiver?
Every law we have or live by came from human legislators, and they're not necessarily moral either. We have no God-given rights. Every right we have is either granted or denied at the whim of the courts, Congress, kings, or clergy.
Would you agree that if it took intelligence to make a model universe in a science lab, then it took superintelligence to make the real universe?
No. If you were, say, an investigator working for an insurance company, then you'd know that it often takes a great deal of skill and technology sometimes to duplicate an accident.
Would you agree that it takes a cause to make a small glass ball found in the woods? And would you agree that making the ball larger does not eliminate the need for a cause? If so, then doesn't the biggest ball of all, the whole universe, need a cause?
Again, not according to physicists. However, if Big Bang cosmology is correct, as they assure me that it is, then I expect that there would be a catalyst behind cosmic inflation, whether it's a collision of extra-dimensional cosmic membranes or whatever. But it wouldn't be a god. Gods and magic are the most infantile excuses men ever imagined to explain anything, and they don't explain anything.
If there is a cause beyond the whole finite, limited universe, would not this cause have to be beyond finite, namely non-finite or infinite?
I'm not sure that the universe is finite, either spatially or temporally. But I know that gods are finite, being the manifestations of human imagination, which is limited. As I said in my book and in so many other places at different times, our ancient ancestors once believed that thunder and lightning and volcanoes were gods in action, that comets were an omen, that the stars and planets had human characteristics, that sickness was a curse of witchcraft, and that epilepsy was demonic possession. All because that's what religion would have us believe. And in each case, the real truth would have never been discovered had we been satisfied by those lies. And in each case, the reality, once discovered, was a revelation of whole new fields of study previously unimagined and vastly more complex than the simple excuses we made up in our ignorance. and no doubt that pattern will continue, such that if we ever do discover a cause for the Big Bang or some better explanation for the origin of life, the universe, and everything, it too will be a wealth of new information with practical application that is so advanced that it will render our previous beliefs in gods and ghosts and magic just as laughably silly as every other aspect of science has already shown them to be.
In the light of the anthropic principle that the universe was fine-tuned for the emergence of life from its very inception, wouldn't it make sense to say there was an intelligent being who pre-planned human life?
There's nothing about human life that appears pre-planned. And if it was, then the convoluted path that got us here reveals the planner to be incompetent. Nearly 4 billion years of development and willfully ignorant, superstitious science deniers are supposed to be the final product. We are literally causing a mass extinction through our incompetence. Yet we have the hubris to call our species man the wise. Wiser men than we should give us a more humble name. And it doesn't make sense to pretend as if the universe were fine-tuned for the emergence of life, not when life is apparently so rare in the cosmos. It can only live temporarily on a fraction of the skin of this one tiny mote of dust and nowhere else in the system. Most life will die instantly anywhere else, and everywhere else we might survive is so far away it would take generations to get there. And we live in a cosmos of 78 trillion light years that we can observe, of wasted space and instant death, where most places cannot harbor life of any kind. Now, if the universe were fine-tuned for life, then it would be more like our favorite science fiction movies, where there is life on practically every world and even in deep space and even on remote asteroids. Such is evidently not the case. The universe is fine-tuned for death, where despite our best advances in technology, we remain effectively trapped on the one and only island in a vast abyss where we can live but for a moment. The cosmos is incomprehensibly vast, and the one thing we can be sure of is that it was not created with us in mind.